Okay, cool. Well, welcome everyone to the March community call. Hope everyone's having a good morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you're calling in from. Here we got the agenda. We got a big agenda packed today. We want to kind of take the time today for this month's community call to chat a little bit about the 2022 investments. So kind of mirroring the blog post that was posted, that Steve posted a while ago. So to kind of start off, move to .NET 7. Aditya, would you like to speak on that?
Sure. I'd like to give a quick update. Before I dive into that, I would like to announce that we released servicing updates for 709, 716, and 722 yesterday. All of them are security fixes, so we recommend everyone to upgrade their installations. So we plan to release in the next few days another preview of PowerShell 7.3.0 Preview 3, which we plan to be based on .NET 7. We did announce last community call that we would be releasing the previous preview based on .NET 7, but we did face a few blocking issues, and to maintain quality, we decided to still ship it on .NET 6. So all the blocking issues have been fixed, and we are working on another release, which should come out in the next few days. We are still committed to release with every preview of .NET 7 as close to possible as the release date, if not on the same day. So that's kind of the shipping cadence that we are planning for the .NET 7.3 cycle. That's it.
Let me just call out one thing, because I want to make sure people understand, like, we're not putting any blame on the .NET team, right? Like, the reason we ship with .NET previews is so we can find these issues early, so that by the time we actually even consider like a release candidate, hopefully all those issues have been resolved, because we do work very closely with the .NET team, and we do appreciate all the efforts they put in there.
Yep, absolutely.
It's just unfortunate that, yeah, sometimes bugs happen and they impact us.
All right, awesome. Next, we got Paul talking about local session configuration support.
Yeah, I can go ahead and share my screen for that. Steve, one of the things that there are three things we were going to talk about: the local session configuration, custom connection, and AMSI WDAC enhancement. So, Steve, my question for you is: are we talking about the WDAC enhancements?
We're talking about everything that we are currently planning to do this calendar year, not necessarily stuff that has already been done. I mean, there's a mix actually in some of this stuff. So I think the answer, I saw your question on Teams earlier. I didn't get a chance to respond to it. I think you can just talk at a high level, like, basically there's changes happening and we're adapting to it.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, or
no?
I
just want to know if
you want to
talk about constrained language mode.
Why don't we move you to the end?
No, I can start.
Okay.
So, okay, yeah. So there's basically three things I was going to talk about that we're looking at doing. The first one is called local session configuration support. And basically what that is that already in PowerShell, we have a very robust system for when you start PowerShell, or when you create a PowerShell session, that you can configure it and it's to quite a large degree. And that's done through existing .pssc files. Currently, that's only supported for remoting WinRM connections. And so what we're thinking about doing is extending that for any PowerShell session that you create by basically adding probably, I haven't thought this through yet, but probably a new keyword when you start PowerShell configuration file, in which case you would pass in one of these .pssc files. And so what would happen is that PowerShell would start, and it would be, instead of being default configuration, which is wide open, everything is available, everything you can do, it would be configured based on this PSSC file.
Paul, could you make the font a bit larger, please?
Yes. Is that better? I'll take that as a yes.
Yes.
Okay. And so, yeah, so why do you want to do this? And basically it's for something called GIA, or just enough administration. the idea is that right now with our SSH remoting endpoint, basically what we do is we create an SSH subsystem that just runs PowerShell with this -s switch. And this -s switch basically says PowerShell is run in server mode. That's what -s means. It's something that we don't publicly expose. When you do like a PowerShell .exe dash question mark, but it is supported. We kind of use it internally, and the idea is that PowerShell can be run in server mode. What does that mean? It means that PowerShell basically, instead of accepting commands from a command line, it basically takes input through the standard in, process standard in, standard out, and it handles remoting protocol messages. Excuse me, I have a little bit of a cough. And so what this basically is doing is that this will allow SSH remoting endpoints to be configurable, which is then you can support something called like just enough administration. And so what does that mean? That means that when the endpoint session is created, you can specify a lot of things about the session configuration. You can set language mode. You can define which commandlets and functions are visible and not allowed to run. You can also define visible providers. File system providers can be visible or not visible. Modules that will be imported into the session before the session begins. So that's what we mean by local session configuration support, and that's something just kind of overall view. We haven't really defined it yet. I'll create an RFC that will go into more details and how that'll work. The next thing is custom remote connections. That's something that actually there's a PR out for now, and basically this implements the RFC. That I created and exists, and if you're interested, you can go take a look at it, and I'll put that into the chat real quick. So I get the chat open. And so what is the idea of custom remote connections? The idea is that right now PowerShell supports like 6 different types of remote connections. 2 or 3 of them I think are just Windows only, but the other ones are multi-platforms, like you can do a remote connection over name pipes, you can do connections over SSH, and of course you can do connections originally over WinRM. The idea for custom remote connection is that this opens, well, right now if you wanted a special connection, custom connection, the only way to implement it is by basically changing the PowerShell engine. You got to submit a PR to the open source PowerShell and try to get those changes in that way. So with the idea of this is that we are opening up some of the existing remoting API, which is old and arcane, to allow third parties, community members, if they so choose, to create custom connections to do maybe special things. And then the idea is that you can then just create a PowerShell module that wraps that custom connection, and then you can import it and use it without having to modify the PowerShell engine at all. And in order to do that, the idea wasn't to really rewrite or refactor the remoting layer. It's old and arcane, a little bit difficult to understand. So basically what I want to do is just add a couple of new, or basically expose a couple of public abstract types, and just 2 of them that you need to override, and then provide examples on how you could create your own custom connection. It wasn't intended to make things really easy. It's just something that I don't expect a lot of people will do, but I think there is a few people, and there's a number of very legitimate cases where a custom remote connection would be very useful. And so this basically opens up the API so that it allows you to do that. And so why would you want to do that? There's a couple of things I can think of. One is, we have that old OMI remote connection that allows you to connect from Linux machines to WinRM, Windows machines, WinRM endpoints. We don't really support that anymore because OMI is deprecated. If you wanted to, as a third party, write your own custom connection to do something like that, you could do that, and again, without having to change the PowerShell engine. Or if you want to create like a new SSH connection that maybe supports some kind of special authentication, some sort of multi-factor authentication that's not supported, you could do that. So again, the idea is that you just basically override these two abstract types and then wrap it into a module. So now you have a module that's called custom SSH connection. You can import it. It exposes this new commandlet that basically creates a PowerShell session, using your new parameter sets, whatever you have. And then once you have that session, you can just use it with normal PowerShell commandlets to enter it or invoke commands on it. So that's the custom remote connections. And then lastly is the AMC and WDAC enhancements. These are Windows only. The WDAC enhancements are actually kind of ongoing right now and aren't finalized yet. And when they are, I'll talk about that later. But the AMC, we actually have an experimental feature in it. And so what is AMC? AMC is anti-malware scan interface. So on Windows platforms, whenever a script is run, it is the script text itself is sent to this AMC scan interface, which is antiviral providers get that, like Windows Defender, and they take a look at that and they scan it and then have certain triggers. If something looks like it's malicious or whatever, it can be blocked from running. The new experimental feature is an enhancement to that. The experimental feature is called PowerShell AMSI method invocation logging. It's basically an enhancement. Instead of just sending the script block text to the scan interface, it now also sends method invocation. So any .NET method invocation gets sent to the scan interface because it was requested by the antiviral people, saying that are using new machine learning algorithms. This kind of information is more useful. For one thing, it can't be obfuscated. With PowerShell, there's so many different ways to write script blocks, and you can write it in such a way that you can obfuscate, you can kind of block or hide what you're trying to do. This is at a lower level. This is when actually method invocation occurs, and that gets passed through the scan interface that can't be obfuscated, and it provides more clear information that the antiviral triggers can use. So that's all the three things that I have to talk about. If there's any questions, feel free to ping me.
So thanks, Paul. So I think we'll move to Travis with some updates on some support things that we're going to be focusing on this year.
Yeah, the first issue is Mariner. So Mariner is a version of Linux that we're making available. I think there's particular support conditions for it, but we'll be making packages available for it and Docker containers. Mariner currently has support, but they're not able to keep their package up to date with our current versions. So it'd be good if we could get our own package. And the other thing that I don't see the full agenda, but the other thing was ARM64 MSI packages, which would also allow us to do when updating of the ARM64 Windows installations. We need to get that work done.
Cool. Thanks, Travis. And then, so Jason, we'll move to you for your agenda items.
Hey, thanks, Stephen. I noticed you're wearing green and today's St. Patty's Day. I'm wearing Microsoft blue. Does that mean I don't get pinched still? I mean, that's what I guess I'll find out throughout the day. Hey, everyone. Excuse me. I apparently have what Paul has. I'm going to drop a link into the chat, something that I'm pretty sure that most of you have seen before. And I'm going to share my screen. I want to show this to you. There's a couple of things I'd like to talk about with you today. And well, apparently one of them is my Mac. Let me get my screen up here. Now, I apologize. I meant to make this in white so it was easier to read, but for some reason, some tabs came up in white, some came up in black. So we're just going to work with it as we have. Now, most of you have seen the What's New in PowerShell X page, and thanks to Sean and the folks in the docs side, they work really hard at trying to make sure that when we release, we have a lot of great information here for you about what improvements have been made and what things you can look for. And oftentimes we'll include code examples and useful things like that to help you evaluate the new release. And I mean, think about it. If you're on an older release, you might be interested in what is coming out and what's new. Well, what we found is that not a lot of folks, and I think I may have, flipped screens here, but not a lot of folks follow necessarily along with our blog site or our tweets, that kind of thing. So really what we wanted to do is PM working with Docs is putting together a commandlet for you. It's going to be called get-what's new. And the commandlet, yes, as you expect, we're going to figure out how to format all of this and bring this to you at a commandlet level. Now, you might be thinking, well, what good is that? Well, think about this. We're going to give you a couple of options with this commandlet, being that, first of all, you can compare versions. So maybe you're sitting on Windows PowerShell 5.1 and you're curious about, what are the differences in PowerShell 7.2 and, am I interested in those? Well, very simply, we can do a comparison for you with the commandlet. We can show you all of the new features for whatever version of PowerShell you're interested in. And more importantly, and this was kind of an important thing for all of us, we wanted you to be able to have a switch option to make it a message of the day. So think about this. You'll be able to put this commandlet into your profile with a daily switch, and you'll get a message of the day, which will be one item from what's new in PowerShell 7. So that's one of the things that we're working on in brief. Thanks for the hand clap, whoever gave the hand clap for that. There's a few other things that we're talking about that we may have additional information for. What we want to do is see how everyone reacts to this. I'll let you know that the RFC for this will be out next week and available if you want to take a look at it. And a couple of other things, you might ask the question, well, how about the change logs or something like that? Give us some feedback. We're thinking about maybe working with change logs and seeing how best to work with that as well. So look forward to a new commandlet, and like I said, we'll get the RFC up, and we're just about ready to share an experimental repo as well. So we'll get that out to you. Something else, and this comes from if you read the investments blog, it said Crescendo might GA sometime this year. Well, we did. So here's the webpage I'd like to take you to, and I'll drop the links to this into chat here in a little bit. Crescendo. So Crescendo is an accelerator for PowerShell. And there's a reason why I said it that way. The idea here is we want you to be able to, and I'm going to use the word wrap, but amplify any of your command line tools to make them more productive for you. Maybe you wish that they produced an objectified output so that you can use objects in the pipeline. Maybe you wish that it had commandlet naming consistency and parameters that were readable. In the past, this has been something that you needed to have some pretty good skill set to do, to wrap your own commands. With Crescendo, it's providing that wrapping for you. And so you describe it. You can use commandlets or describe it in a JSON file. And you can build then the commandlet that you want. And you can build these, Crescendo will export these to a module that's ready to be put up on the gallery or deployed anywhere on your system. So with Crescendo and getting the GA out the door, we really, really hope that you'll get a chance to try this out and give us some feedback. Now, a couple of things. First of all, I want to thank Jim Truer for all of the effort, time, and conversations and discussions around building Crescendo. Our repo is open, and we look forward to your comments, and we are accepting PRs now into the Crescendo repo. But there's something else that I want to show you, and this has been something that we've been working on, and I want to give Docs and especially Sean Wheeler a shout out for this. One of the things that we felt was really important when Crescendo came out, of course, is to have some documentation. And so Sean helped us create some new structure and some new documentation. And Sean, if you want to jump on here and yell at me if I miss something, let me just show everybody. If you go out to the docs for Crescendo, we have a variety of the modules that we ship around PowerShell, where a lot of our feature development is being done. Crescendo is one of them. We have an overview for it, but if you look, we also have Getting Started. And we started to put out the documentation for Crescendo here. Now, there's a couple of more documents that we want to work on and get out to you. But what we hope is that this will be enough for you to get started with. So we've got the installation of Crescendo, how to start to build the command line from it, a lot of useful information in here. And one of the other reasons I wanted to give Sean Wheeler from Docs a big shout out and thank you for helping us get this documentation together and helping me get this up and mounted was that Sean also wrote some additional articles for the community blog site. So while this documentation, I wrote it to help wrap a particular command, he did a different command and he looked at things a little bit differently. So I also want to point out, if you haven't seen it and you're interested in Crescendo, go out to the community blog site. And out on there, if you search for Crescendo, Sean Wheeler's written a series of articles that'll also take you through his perspective of walking through and wrapping things with Crescendo. So welcome to the release of Crescendo. Please give us your feedback. We're very interested in what you think. So that was one. That was Crescendo. I think if I remember from the agenda at this point, and I'll stop sharing my screen for a second. I think if I remember from the agenda, the next thing up was Platypus 2.0. And I see Sydney nodding her head, so I'm like, okay, apparently I got that right. Let's talk about Platypus. So Platypus 2.0 is something that we've been working on mainly to help with an internal team and deploying out our updatable help. Many of you have heard from previous calls that we've been working on gathering teams together that produce PowerShell commandlets and trying to help them get their modules on updatable help if they desire, so that they can produce better help for everybody so that you get the correct version of help when you're working with it in the terminal. Well, along that way, we've been working on Platypus 2.0 to bring new features to that, both to the documentation and to the usefulness of Platypus 2.0. And we've had some delays. And so working with our other team, we've been working through some of these delays and we are just now starting to work through some of them. So I expect for you to all start seeing more previews and to hear additional information about our work on Platypus 2.0 around the May future timeframe. About mid-year is when I think we'll be providing more information on Platypus 2.0. So we're really looking forward to that. And I think the last thing on my agenda that I wanted to talk about, and all of a sudden my brain just forgot, but I think it was PS desired state. Thanks. So if you take a look at our investment page, or if you've been in this call, I think back in January or maybe in November, I was talking about the desire for us. We're working on PS desired state, DSCV3. We've been doing this work based upon some needs for internal teams, which we're still doing. But one of the things that we felt was really important was a couple of things. One, to finally open source the repo for PS desired state. We are going to do that. And what I'm targeting, yeah, you're probably going to hold me to it, but what I'm trying to target is mid-April for us to open source that repo. Something else that's real important that we're going to be working on before we open source it, but it's probably going to happen mainly after we open source it. We have a lot of DSC documentation, and we're working on updating the parts that make sense for DSCV3. And we want to create some additional documentation. We know that there's a lot of, well, how do I use this? Well, quite honestly, that's what we need to document. And there's going to be some gaps in there because, as I said, we've been doing this work for an internal team. And so we want your help when we open source this by filing issues to tell us where the gaps are. Now, when we open source this initially, we're not going to be accepting PRs on it right away, but we will be accepting your feedback to help us have conversations about where we want to go with that. So we look forward to doing that. I think, Stephen, that was the end of my list.
Yes. And I want to point out one question that there was in the chat about the get what's new. Can get what's new be used with custom commandlets or modules like get help?
I'm not exactly sure I understand the question. Get what's new will have help, so you can run help on it. You'll be able to, and let me just tell you this, maybe this helps answer the question. We will be releasing it as its own module on the gallery, and it will be available down level to Windows PowerShell 5.1. So you'll be able to get that module. You'll have that commandlet, and then you can use that commandlet in anything else you do, any of the automation that you're doing or anything like that.
Okay, great. And then I think we'll move to Sean for some doc updates.
All right, I'm going to drop some content here in the chat, some links. I want to, well, let me share my screen. I first want to welcome our newest member of the Docs team, Michael Lombardi. This is wrapping up week 2 for him, and he's already having an impact on the Docs. It's been great to have him on board. One of the new things that we've released is this new article about member access enumeration that was Mikey's first big PR. He's been helping on others as well, but this was a nice article to solidify some terminology and gather some information that was kind of spread out all over. So take a look at that. I also just want to reiterate about the new docs for Crescendo here. As you've seen, there's a link in the chat. We have some new documentation for PSC or DSC version 3 out there. More to come. Since we talked about PlatyPS, I wanted to point out to the article we have in the PowerShell docs already that walks you through how to create help using PlatyPS. I'll probably be moving this article over to our utility modules section here under PlatyPS, and we have plans to add more content like we did for Crescendo for both secrets management and secret store. So that will be coming in the next few months. And I want to point out updates to what's new in PowerShell 7.3. So all the latest information for Preview 2 has been updated, and especially here under experimental features, this links to the information about all of the new experimental features in 7.3. And I think that wraps me up.
I also give Mikey a moment to, if people aren't familiar with him from the community, to give a little quick introduction of yourself, and yeah, welcome to the team.
Yeah, sure. I'm stoked to have joined. I've been around the community for a little bit. I was most recently over at Puppet trying to integrate with all of these things, in particular DSC. Decided to make the jump from software engineering over to technical writing, which I can say I'm thoroughly enjoying after a little over 2 weeks. It felt a lot like coming home. PowerShell is what sort of changed the trajectory of my career. So coming back and being able to contribute directly from the inside feels great. And I get to take a lot of experience integrating from the outside and bring that in. So I think that's been really enjoyable. I felt pretty welcome by the team, so everything's been going great. I don't know if they're annoyed with all of my questions and hypotheses, but it's hard to keep quiet whenever you've been working on it from the outside for close to a decade.
We're super happy to have you on board, Mikey. Cool, and I guess we'll keep going down our agenda list. Dongbo, would you like to speak a little bit about work done this year and focus this year on completer predictors and module isolation?
Yeah, sure. The completion predictor is the one I demoed in the last community meeting. So we're gonna open source it, and target date will be the mid-April as well, as I talked to Jason. So we currently have it already, like the codes are already uploaded to private repository, but the remaining part is the CI/CD part so that we can actually release it and upload the first preview version of this module to the PowerShell gallery. So we'll get that done by mid-April. That's that. And as for the module isolation, let me share my screen very quick. So for the module isolation, like some of you may know that we had an RFC about this module isolation work back. Let me see, I'm trying to find it out. Like half a year ago, in August last year, I think. So it's like a very ambitious idea about solving this problem in general. Something wrong with my mouth. Sorry. So the idea at that point is that we try to solve this in general, so that end user will be able to load arbitrary modules into a assembler context. But it turns out it's like it's more it turns out it's gonna bring up more issues than the benefits. So we shift our focus from like having a general solution to actually like focus on the module author side, so that we can make it easier for the module author to leverage this assembler context thing to load the whole module into a custom assembler context without being affected by any other modules or the PowerShell itself. So as part of that work, while we basically like there's already a PR checked in, which is a refactoring of the module logic about assembly loading. With this refactoring work, now like I guess some of you might already read this article about resolving dependency conflict in PowerShell, and the big example in it, which is the most robust solution so far, would involve bridging, a bridge assembly, like in the middle of the module assembly and your dependency assembly. So it basically requires a refactoring of module into two separate parts and have a bridge assembly in the middle to relay the calls to the shared dependencies. So with this refactoring, we don't need that bridge assembly anymore. So it's gonna be just the module layout will be just like this with a init DLL, which gonna define your own custom ALC and set up the resolving event handler, and all your module assemblies like nesting module or root modules along with your dependencies are just put in the dependencies, and that's it, without you actually needing to separate your module to two parts, having a bridge assembly in the middle. So this will I think significantly like lower the effort you really gonna need to pursue the solution that you're gonna load your module into a separate ALC. Beside this work, we also like starting have where is that? Yes, more samples in and documentations for other alternative solutions, and including like once I think this change will be part of the next preview release of PowerShell, and after that the release is done, we will have a new documentation, new samples, just focused on this new solution. But there's already a repository here, introducing having sample code and documentations about other alternative solutions. And we also updated this this article. If you look at it, like this part is the most robust solution so far about using the assembler context, which involve using a bridging DLL. And the section right below that, like we basically change this section and make it a point to this sample repository which describe an alternative solution, which is less robust but should be working well for most cases. And once this fix gets into the next preview next PowerShell preview release, we'll update this this repository to have a samples for this new solution as well. So that wraps up my section, I think.
Hey, Stephen, can I make one addition?
Yeah, sure.
In addition to, I think you all heard what Dongbo was saying about the PowerShell Completer. And if you didn't get a chance to see Dongbo demonstrate that, go out to our YouTube channel and you can see the last community call where he did that demonstration. Just to let you know, Dongbo mentioned that we're going to release that as mid-April. Just wanted you to know that this is something that we are working on as an experiment. So we're going to release it as an experiment. Again, that's something that we definitely want your feedback on. But we're also going to release this open to BRs because we want your ideas too. And we're going to put together some documentation on creating your own predictor. Our hope is to encourage you to experiment and to work together with us on some feedback so that we can understand a little bit better of how to improve the experience around our thoughts on the intelligent shell. So we look forward to getting that completer out to you. Thanks, Dongbo. Really appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Jason and Dongbo. We'll then move to Anam for some PowerShell Get and gallery updates. Is she here?
Hey, yes, I am. Hey guys, so let's begin with PowerShell Get first. So as you may know, we've been working on PowerShell Get v3, which is a rewrite of PowerShell Get v2, but it has a simpler code base. It removes the dependency on package management, but it's still compatible with that functionality of v2 you expect. Our goal for PowerShell Get v3 for 2022 is to complete this rewrite that we've been working on and to make PowerShell Get v3 feature complete. We also want to resolve bugs that were brought up from previous preview releases and ensure that compatibility with v2 and what customers expect from that. I also wanted to say that we appreciate all the feedback that we've been receiving from the community. It has really helped guide us and kind of know what bugs are there and what we need to also pay more attention to, or also what people are wanting to see more in v3. So please keep that coming in 2022. And then on to PowerShell Gallery. So the usage of PowerShell Gallery has really been growing these past couple of years. And we as a team want to focus on what that means towards availability, scalability, mitigating outages, and other concerns. And that is our focus for 2022. So we're currently investigating some architectural changes to the gallery to better support this growth in core scenarios. And as we have more information, we'll definitely let you guys know more too. Thank you.
Cool, thanks. And then we'll pass it to Andy for some VS Code extension updates.
Hi there. So we've got a lot to share about the extension, but before we get into that, I actually want to introduce our latest and greatest new addition to the team, Patrick, who's been working very diligent with me to move our extension, as you know, from preview to stable, and we're getting there. But Patrick, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, I am Patrick Meineke, probably better known as Seemingly Science. Some folks may know me. I've been in the community for, I don't know, like 5 or 6 years, and I'm going to be sort of taking over the role that Rob Holt held, mostly working with the extension and then just kind of getting into everything else. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I, for one, am like super happy to have Patrick. As you know, I kind of took over Tyler's role, and now we've got Patrick taking over Rob's role. So we do continue to have 2 awesome maintainers, if I may say so myself, on the extension, as well as our great PM team, Sydney and Steven. And so onto the extension, let me just get this window shared. I'm actually going to do a little bit of a demo because I think a lot of people know that we've been hard at work kind of in the core engine, the server side, PowerShell editor services like the LSP, hidden covers that power the extension. And while we've done a hell of a lot of work on that, like over the last almost year now, trying to like get this pipeline threading rewrite in, which actually Patrick sort of started when he was a community maintainer, is now helping us kind of push through the last hurrah that we need. We've taken the last month or two to do some higher level client side fixes as well, just because, well, frankly, I just wanted it to look a little bit better. And so I'm going to walk through some of the newer, more visual things that you'll see fixed and updated in the PowerShell extension. So if I go through our release history, I just want to call out some of the awesome work that we've been doing here. I think our last community call probably happened around the last PowerShell the preview 2.1. I think we did 4 different previews in February. So thank you to everyone who's continuing to update their PowerShell preview extension in VS Code. We have a bunch of fixes. The main thing, we actually redirected this private data. Oh, don't double click this. We redirected private data. This actually fixed colors on older versions of Windows. Crazy thing, but we actually got to delete an entire class around console color, and the extension now just works with colors as you write them to the console. A little demo on that, and people filed bugs on this, which is why we knew it would happen. Check this out. Write debug and write host with no new line in colors. They work properly. Well, it did a minute ago. Oh, ignore the right debug one. But the other 2 work properly. We actually have the no new line getting respected and the colors coming through. I think that this one is just a bad demo. So thank you for filing issues. I think right debug doesn't take things. We'll ignore the right debug one. But we have our colors plumbed through properly. You can actually, this was a huge one that got pointed out to us that browser's not going to show. There was an error if you had like exclude entries in your VS Code settings. This actually meant that you couldn't open the extension in one of the biggest repositories out there, which is like the VS Code repository, like the code powering the editor. This got pointed out to us by one of those maintainers. It had sort of slipped through the cracks. If you look at this issue number, it's number 2000, and we've been working in the late 3000 issues. But we managed to get that fixed up. You can actually now, if you're running the preview extension, not worry about it not starting up, regardless of the repository that you're in. There were a lot of fixes to like resetting progress messages at the end of the REPL. The REPL kind of works now as you're running this. I think write progress, I don't have a demo set up, but if you have a function that runs write progress, this never worked before in the stable extension. We have this working in the preview extension. You can run write progress. Things just work as expected. They get cleared when you're done. A lot of that was thanks to Patrick for pointing out like what parts we needed to hook back in. His like hugest contribution way back when was PS readline integration into the extension, and we just keep working on making that better. We have PS readline 2.2.2 in right now, so we're up to date on that. More recently, we actually started using the new language status item API. So if you remember, the extension usually has a little button down here called with a PowerShell icon and a version on it. Thing is, every extension that was being written for VS Code was adding their own icon to this status bar. So the VS Code team kind of came to the extension authors, and we gave some feedback to them a while ago about this, and they added a new little menu for language status. So all of us extension authors can just add to this, and if you have multiple of these running, you have a list of them. But I really want to call this out because not only is it using the new API, by default, you have to find it under this little button here in the bottom right that's showing up. And if you click the pin, then it shows back exactly where you expect it to be with PowerShell little code icon in the version. You can click it and it'll let you change your PowerShell session here. That was one of the things I wanted to demo here. And if I continue looking at my list, I think one thing I want to call out is our snippets were overhauled by Justin recently. If you're a user of the snippets, please give the new snippets a try in the preview. We've decided that now is a good time to go ahead and do that because what we had was out of date. A lot of them were like snippets that would introduce code that you shouldn't even be using in PowerShell anymore. So thank you so much, Justin. Really appreciated that work. But I'm actually going to move over to this demo script because we overhauled the completions at least a little bit. One thing is that we actually lit up a whole bunch of new icons with the completions. I went through and actually looked at like what we were sending back from the server to the client and went, hey, we could map these a lot better. Somebody called out and asked us to do so. And we had to remove an entire layer of abstraction that didn't need to exist anymore just because this extension is multiple years old. And so there's there were times when abstractions were added that just don't apply anymore. So we actually got to remove a lot of code and more accurately map like PowerShell completion types to the completions that the editor expects. And now if you go here, we actually have all of these icons lit up for like text completions, history completions, command. Provider item is files, and this icon in the demo doesn't show it, but I'll go to an actual file and you'll see that it actually comes through as files and you get those file icons. Methods and parameter names. The other one I want to call out, parameter names as parameters do work. It will also do operators. So let me write a little bit more code and show you that. We've got variables, all of these new icons show up. And while I'm speaking of icons, we also updated these icons in the top right corner, as well as the icons in the ISE to use built-in code icons in Visual Studio. We used to ship our own little like images, which just, you know, didn't look great next to VS Code icons. So now we're using standard VS Code icons wherever we can. But if I go ahead and continue that little demo and do that, we got icons here, which is mostly showing that that continues to work. We didn't break that, I promise. But I really like lighting this up. You can do that. Operators show up with operator icons, and parameters show up using the parameter icon. So that does work. And I think there was one more thing I wanted to show, which was, do I have a class here? Yeah, check that out. Classes light up with a class icon. If you have a class, it plumbs through and the icon comes out. So that was a nice little plumbing through. And the last thing, when we were in that completion code, you know what I noticed? We weren't respecting cancellation tokens. So the way that like this works at a high level is the editor says, hey, I have this line of code and I want you to give me completions. You hit like control space or you've been typing and you're typing out keyword triggers for completions in VS Code. That goes and asks LSP, the backend, like PowerShell Editor Services, for some completions. And so it queues up all of these requests for completions that the server then tries to fulfill. It also cancels completions that are no longer like, that no longer matter. If you've typed a few more keywords, it tries to cancel the other ones. We weren't respecting those cancellations and we were just processing them in the background and then sending them nowhere. So we just, real simple, we plumbed through the cancellation token and we'll actually cancel the queued like completion tasks. And this resulted in actually a much faster experience. I didn't want to claim so until we actually had some user feedback. But yeah, in the latest preview, a couple of people let us know on the Discord it is indeed faster because we're no longer like doing a whole bunch of work we didn't have to do anymore. And so I think that just about ends my demo. This was the other demo for completions. There's that namespaces are lit up as well with a little namespace icon. But yeah, so please go ahead and run the PowerShell preview extension for VS Code. We really are planning to do this in like the next few weeks-ish to get this preview into stable. We have, I think, 3 main work items to finish. One huge one Patrick is working on, which is to get like the attached debugger working. We have the regular debugger working if you've actually just launched a script. So launch debug works. And if you're a user of the extension, you know what I mean by launch debug versus attached debug. We're working on ironing out the kinks for attached debug, and we have a couple kinks on reading input in PowerShell commands that I'm trying to figure out. I think we have 2 different bugs for that. But overall, that's our 3 huge remaining bugs to finish. And if we get those fixed and in, we're feeling pretty confident about getting this out and the old stable extension updated. So thanks for continuing to test it and bearing with us while we work on all of this.
Awesome, thanks, Andy. Excuse me. I think we're on our last agenda item, OpenSSH for Windows. Danny, are you here to give an update on that? Or Baloo?
I am here. So, update for SSH for Windows. So currently, the version of, I'd say, OpenSSH is on 8.9. Our latest release is 8.6. For Win32 OpenSSH, we will be releasing Win32 OpenSSH beta 8.9 probably today or tomorrow. So look for that if you're following our beta releases. We are also in the process of updating the version of Win32 OpenSSH in Windows 11. And so in the fall release, we should have that updated 8.9 included in the fall release. And we're also looking at updating that on the server side as well. So that's a little bit of a different process. So we'll be starting that soon. But look for an updated version in Windows Server later this year as well. Kind of the big things that are different in these releases are obviously the same upstream work that we have from the overall OpenSSH project, but we've also included some heavily requested features like FIDO2 support, which gives us the ability to do a lot of two-factor authentication. And we're also adding a little bit of telemetry on our side, just so we know the usage around OpenSSH, because we've never had any telemetry in the past. And this will also help us with things like different ciphers that we ship into Windows, and then being able to adjust which ciphers we ship in box just for added security. And that's it, unless Blue or Steve, you have anything else to add?
Yeah, let me just add one thing real quick. Thanks to the work from Heath Stewart, the next GitHub release will also be an
yes.
package, not just a zip file.
Yes, that is a very, very good call out. Thank you, Steve.
And we will eventually publish the WinGet, but don't expect that to happen with the next one that's coming out this week. I know that's been an ask as well.
Awesome. Okay, great. I think we are at the end of our main agenda. As usual, please. Oh yeah, is there questions?
I see a question about, I think this related to the telemetry you just mentioned, Danny. It says, how will telemetry be managed?
So the telemetry is just going to go into the standard Windows telemetry pipeline. So if you turn off Windows telemetry, it will also turn off the OpenSSH telemetry. Given they're shipping as an inbox, given Win32 OpenSSH ships inbox, it's just packaged in with the same Windows telemetry.
Okay. Okay, cool. Well, yeah, keep questions coming in the chat. I think we'll move on to some of the questions in the GitHub issue. First one coming from Brett Miller, asking about when we will likely see native NuGet v3 support within PowerShell Get. Sydney, do you want to speak on this?
Yeah, sure. So today in the PowerShell Get v3 previews, NuGet v3 support is there. I will add like one caveat to that, I guess, which is I know that oftentimes when folks are using NuGet v3 endpoints or repositories, they're also needing an authentication experience. We've also done some work around credential persistence with repositories for PowerShell Get v3, thanks to a community contribution, and that will be available in the next preview release. I saw you come on too, if there was anything you wanted to add to that.
I was just going to add on and say that with the NuGet v3 protocol, we also don't support wildcard search, and that's actually more from the NuGet side than from us. But we do make sure that, if you're running find PS resource or the commandlet to go search, and you are trying to use wildcard, we let you know. So we don't just let that, query go untamed. But regular search and stuff is all fine.
Cool. And I would just add one other thing, I guess, just to clarify. We do not have any plans to release PowerShell Get v2 again. So if you're waiting for NuGet v3 support there, unfortunately, it's probably not going to come.
And the publishing support for v3, yes.
All right. Let me cover the next question before we get to the chat question. Okay. So Alia asked about the PowerShell profiler. So I want to talk more generally first before we talk about this one. So one of the things we're doing in 7.3 that we did in 7.2 is the maintainers will be kind of prioritizing or choosing a few community feature PRs because they're pretty heavy and it takes time to review, that we're going to make an attempt to at least spend effort reviewing and get those in. And I think the profiler is one of those that's being considered. So no commitments at this time. I think the maintainers are still probably reviewing that list, but hopefully we'll have more information about what we're choosing to kind of prioritize in the future. All right, and then Danny, do you want to answer the question about SSH copy ID?
I don't know off the top of my head. I can follow up offline. So if you want, you can email me, Greg, or you can just at me on Twitter and just message me there, and then we can follow up there.
I think the problem is that command is literally a bash script. So if you run it under WSL, it'll work. I think the question is, will we have a Windows equivalent? So Daniel will follow up on that.
Sounds good. And then the last question, at least in the repo, says, as it doesn't appear it's being done already, would it be an idea to keep these issues open until the recording and notes are posted to the repo? Adjacent to that, attaching the PR to the issue. I think that's a great suggestion, tying the issues and to the PRs too. So we can definitely do that.
I think one thing I would say about that, I think the reason why we're closing the issues is just to clearly indicate to the community that we're no longer going to respond. So at least like personally, once the community call is over, if you continue to add questions there, they're probably not going to get seen. So just want to clearly communicate that the issue is closed. That being said, I don't see any reason why we couldn't link the PR to the issue still.
Yep, yeah. I think that makes perfect sense.
Yep, we'll do that going forward. Cool. And then I see Andy's doing another call out to a big bug fix. Thanks for that. Any other questions? Feel free to post them in the chat or come off mute. Looks like we have a few minutes left.
And I expect Sydney will probably open the issue for the next month anyways. And then if anything, because when we close this one for this call, you can start putting questions on the next one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've been trying to do that. As soon as I close this one, I'll make the new one, and that should happen later today.
I don't know if Amber's on the call.
I can try and take this one. I saw a question just come in to the chat, which is, can we maybe expect PS Gallery statistics to be fixed this year? This is a very timely question because it's something we've been talking about internally as a team recently, and trying to problem solve with that, along with all the other things we kind of have on our agenda this year. I will say that individual package statistics, if you go to an individual packages page on the PowerShell Gallery, that should be working and up to date as far as we know. So what's missing is the aggregated statistics. And at the very least, we do have plans to make that a better user experience and more clearly communicate in the meantime that we're sort of aware of that issue and that the statistics are broken. That being said, I think I appreciate the patience everyone's had with us. We know that this has been broken for a while, and it's a big part of our plan too that Anna mentioned around rethinking the PowerShell Gallery and how we can make this more or better supported in the future. I know that doesn't really answer your question about like if you can expect it to be fixed this year. And the truth is, I don't have a commitment on that one way or the other.
I think let me just add, I think the discussion we had in the team is because people can get data for individual packages already, it is not a priority to fix the statistics page itself. And one thing that we'll probably do is make it clear like that page is not working and we're not going to make it a priority right now to fix that because there's just other stuff more important to be addressed.
Awesome. I don't think I see any more questions at the moment. We'll wait a minute or two in case anyone else is typing any last questions. But I think we're at the end of the call and we're almost right on time, which is awesome. I was worried we were going to go over.
Make one more announcement that I made before the call started, which is that I know today we had a pretty heavy agenda of members from the team talking on subjects, but we really do want this to be an interactive community call, and we want to involve community members. So we love it when community members are willing to contribute demos. So be thinking if there's an April demo that you might want to show, and feel free to post it in the issue if ideas come up.
Awesome. Thanks for the call out. And I think we will sort of end it there. There's nothing else anyone else wants to announce. We can end off here. Right on time.
Excellent, Stephen. Thank you. I'm stopping the recording now.
Awesome. Thanks. Well, thanks everyone for coming, and we'll see you guys at the next one.